They called me a joke, and they did it with a smile that cut deeper than any blade. I can still hear the clinking of silver plates and the heavy, suffocating laughter around the dinner table on my last night in that house. I had just been publicly discredited by the scientific community for challenging the accepted, comfortable climate models. My peers declared my atmospheric research alarmist fiction, and the funding evaporated overnight. But the real knife twist came from my own family. When I told them I was pivoting to bioacoustic ecology, trying to listen to the distress calls of frogs and birds to predict environmental collapse, they didn't just look at me with pity. They looked at me with contempt. "Go listen to frogs, genius," my uncle sneered, putting down his wine glass with a clink. "That's where your future lies now, in the mud with the insects. You are an absolute embarrassment to our name and you will fail." My mother shook her head, whispering about wasted potential. In that room, my life's work was reduced to a punchline, and my dream was deemed a ridiculous, futile waste of a brilliant mind. The humiliation was a physical weight, crushing my chest, but it also lit a fire in my gut. I knew then that the path of a true pioneer is always walked alone, but I never anticipated how cold the shadows would get. I didn't just walk away. I vanished into the shadows of the world's most forgotten, dying ecosystems. While my family and former colleagues retreated to their comfortable offices and their comfortable lives, I strapped on mud boots and sat in the silence of dead valleys. Bioacoustics wasn't a joke to me. It was the missing language of the earth. Every frog, every bird, every rustling leaf was a pixel in the grand, urgent picture of environmental collapse. I was a frog listener in their eyes, a laughingstock in the scientific journals, but to me, I was a diagnostician listening to the heartbeat of a dying world. I lived in isolation, sleeping in makeshift tents, mocked by passing locals and former peers who called my work pseudoscience. But the silence of the barren lands taught me more than any peer-reviewed paper ever could. I learned to listen to the subtle shifts, the dissonance, the quiet cries of species on the brink. The struggle was brutal, a relentless, unforgiving climb up a mountain of skepticism and zero funding. I watched the lands I studied turn to dust, and I felt the weight of the world's indifference pressing down on me. But I persisted. Night after night, in the pitch black, I recorded the acoustic tapestry of the wild. Then came the breakthrough. I realized that the disruption of the natural soundscape, the absence of specific frog calls, the dissonance in bird songs, was the exact precursor to ecological tipping points. I built algorithms, predicting the collapse of local ecosystems months before the visual decay even appeared. Then came the restoration phase. By playing back the key acoustic signals, the mating calls, the territorial warnings, I coaxed dormant seeds to sprout, brought back the pollinators, and rebuilt the soil. I turned a completely dead, barren desert into a thriving, vibrant wetland, a living testament to the power of listening to nature. The world couldn't ignore the data anymore. The frog listener became a global authority, her acoustic restoration protocols saving millions of acres of dying land, turning skepticism into global respect. I stood before international councils, not as a disgraced scientist, but as a pioneer who had rewritten the rules of ecological survival. Years later, I returned, not with a humble request for forgiveness, but with the undeniable weight of transformation. I invited them to the edge of the very valley they thought I'd ruined myself in, a valley now known as the Silent Sanctuary. They stood there, the same relatives who once sneered at my frog noises, holding high-tech tablets, watching a live feed of a thriving, lush forest where only dead sand existed in their memories. The air was thick with the sounds of life, frogs croaking, birds singing, the rustle of leaves in a healthy breeze. My uncle, the man who told me I was an embarrassment, looked at the vibrant wetland, then at me, his face pale, the color drained from his cheeks. The consequences of their derision were laid bare. They had dismissed the future, and here I stood, holding the future in my hands. The silence of their shame was louder than any laughter they had mustered years ago. I didn't need to gloat. The thriving ecosystem, the global respect, the sheer beauty of what I had built was the ultimate verdict. They didn't apologize with words, but the quiet tremble in their eyes spoke volumes. The derision of others is often a projection of their own limitations, a fear of the unknown. By clinging to the silence of the earth and the courage of my own convictions, I didn't just prove them wrong, I found a symphony of purpose. The journey wasn't about winning their approval. It was about honoring the dream, no matter how quiet or ridiculed it sounded to the world. And in the end, the earth sang a song of triumph, and I was just lucky enough to listen when everyone else was too busy laughing.